Welcome to the Iraq Football Podcast, ladies and gents. We have some good news, we have some bad news. Bad news is that unfortunately Iraq's World Cup qualifier that was supposed to be played in March has now been postponed up until June. But the good news is that we are back for February's edition of the Iraq Football Podcast. I'm your host Hassan N. Bilal, and with me my good friend Hassan Osama. Hassan, welcome to the show.
Yeah, always great to be back here to discuss everything that's gone on in Iraqi football, and there's quite a bit that's happened. So, always a pleasure.
There's loads to discuss actually this month. We'll start off, of course, looking back at Iraq winning against Kuwait 2-1. It was some time ago, but we never really got to discuss the match. So let's start off there, Hassan. What did you think of Iraq's performance?
So, the first half, pretty much the same as what we had seen, in my opinion, of the previous friendlies of the last period. Characterized as well by poor performance from Mohammed Hamid, which is not so surprising nowadays, but really big takeaway for me personally was how much the game changed. The introduction of Mohamed Qasim and Mohamed Dawood in the second half, and Mohamed Qasim especially, who really stole the show and clear man of the match. The main driving force behind us, winning the game and with some style in the second half.
It was quite. It was an interesting starting lineup. So he started off with Mohammed Hamid in goal. I think Jalal was injured for this match. Ala Mahawi, Ahmed Ibrahim, familiar faces at the back, but Ali Faiz started and Durgham Ismail, given that Rabin Sulaqa and Ali Adnan weren't here. Amjad was in the middle, and he was joined by Maitham Jabbar and Ibrahim Bayish. And on the left, Hussein Ali and Ayman Hussein up front with Sajjad Jasim to his right. So there were some familiar players there, but it was quite a new team in terms of players that have never really played together, and they might not have been able to gel together. So I wasn't surprised when I saw us losing 1-0 at half-time. But I think the way the team came back was really impressive. They showed that they can dig in, they can work hard, and we really demonstrated that we do have squad depth in terms of having quite a lot of talented players that we can look to bring on and change the game. We talked about Mohammed Qasim, how he came on, but also you could look at Mohammed Dawood and some of the other players that were on the bench. To have players like that are able to come in and change the game, we've not really had that for a long time. Usually we have maybe a good 7 or 8 players and 1 or 2 weaknesses in the starting 11, but I don't think we've ever gone through a period, at least during the last 10 years, where we've had this level of depth in the squad. I think the system Katanec has set up has played a huge part in allowing us to bring in players and rotating them and still having a functional squad. I think if we look at life for the Iraqi national team prior to Katanec, and Katanec has his own flaws. I've spoken about things that I don't like that I've seen from him, but credit where credit is due. He's created a system where we can replace Mimi and bring in Ala Abbas. You could take out Ala Abbas, you could put in Ayman Hussein, you could take out Ayman Hussein, you could bring in Mohammed Dawood. And that is all part of Katanec's plan, where you can bring in players and the team still functions. It's been a long time since we've had such a functional team. Usually, you have players and they will create through their own talents or their abilities, but it's never really been the result of a system that functions and operates effectively. So Katanec has done such a good job in terms of creating this team, and even though we were missing so many key players, none of the expats were there, none of the European-based players were there, we still managed to beat Kuwait, who are a team that we've not beaten in a long time. And if we look at some of the teams we've beat recently, again, there are teams that we haven't beaten in years, and now with our so-called B team, or maybe even C team, we're able to dispatch them. So the signs are very, very good. But now that we're not going to be playing against Hong Kong in March, which is a game we were all very, very excited for. You know, we've been waiting a long time for this group to kind of conclude. We're top of the group, but this match yet again delayed. It now means we're going to be playing Hong Kong, we're going to be playing Cambodia and Iran all in the space of a couple of weeks, I think, in June. And hopefully that goes to plan. What are your thoughts on this, Hassan? Do you think we're going to be able to top the group now that we're playing in 3 games such a short span of time, or do you think we have the resources that we can actually we can beat anybody?
So coming back to the previous games in this group, you know, it's the same structure as always, and that we've seen with Katanec, and it's been giving us some solid results. And you know, we're seeing that again with the same friendlies that we've been playing recently. So I'm not worried too much of playing the games all in quick succession. I think we should be able to handle them. And let's be honest, we're playing against Cambodia, we're playing against Hong Kong in a couple of games, and if we do our job in those games, we should be solid enough to make it through. It shouldn't be too much of a problem. My main concern is now that the pressure increases. That's the biggest thing, is that since we're not going to be playing in March, and if we're going to look at it this way, Bahrain and Iran are both going to play a couple of games in March. They're going to be playing ahead of us. They're going to accumulate some points. They might be, you know, we're only a few points ahead of Bahrain, and Iran is not too far away, let's be honest. So it could easily be that, you know, we're playing in June and we're chasing, you know, one of the top 2 spots once all over again, because we'll have played 2 games fewer. So in that case, it may be a situation where we are beating ourselves. Like if our players are not, you know, up to the challenge of like dealing with this pressure, then it can be an issue. But you know, really, in a vacuum, if we're going to look at it that way, I think we should be able to beat all of these teams. We should make it through. But that's the main issue, is having the delayed games.
We talked a little bit about expats. Let's go back and discuss this. There was leaks talking about a sudden change of heart from Katanec. What inspired this? Where this came from? We've not really heard much, but apparently the expat players, about 8 of them if I'm not mistaken, all received invitations to the preliminary squad for the upcoming World Cup qualifiers. This included the likes of Justin Meram, Ahmed Yassin, once again, 2 players that have been sidelined for some time now. There's been a lot of discussion about them as well. People talking about they've been barred from the national team, etc. Jilwan, Rawan Amin as well was an interesting name that featured, especially given that he's only just started walking again. So for him to feature in the March game, it was practically impossible. But now that the games have moved to June, it is very possible that we might see Rawan Amin make his debut for the Iraqi national team. I know he's a player that Iraqi fans are very, very excited to see. He's a player that's a holding midfielder. He's a destroyer, reads the game very well, and does the basics very, very well. Hassan, out of those players, who would you say are the ones you're most excited to see added to the squad?
Yeah, of course, you know, excited to see each one of these players, but you know, I'm really hoping that we can see a good opportunity provided to, you know, the likes of Osama Rashid, Jinoan especially. Those 2 guys, you know, they haven't really had any real chances. Like, Osama Rashid has been with the national team, has had call-ups with the national team going back many years with no real, you know, fair chance, honestly. So I'm really hoping that we can see them have a fair opportunity to play and, you know, show their quality, because they do have quality, and they would probably be one of the best players on the team. So I'm really hoping that we can give them that chance. Really excited as well, see Justin and Ahmed Yassin as well. You know, we know their quality, we know what they can provide, and I think that they would be a strong boost for us, like, and especially in these coming games. They've got the experience, and they've got the skill to really give us an extra edge. So each of those, but especially Osama, Jilouan, and as well if Rawan can come in, I'm hoping that people can be patient with him as well, because especially for a midfielder to come into a brand new environment, a brand new team coming off of an injury, I hope people can manage their expectations and give him time, because players need that need an ability, a chance to to start off and can really have a run of games to feel comfortable with the team. It's not going to be sudden a sudden explosion. Not suddenly we have Xavi or the reborn reincarnation of Iniesta. It's not going to be like that. So
I'm hoping though, but by the time we actually reach June, he would have had some game time with the Östersunds. He's been out for some time. It was a ruptured ACL that happened a couple of months ago. I know he's returned to training only last week. I speak to Rawan quite frequently actually, and he's excited. He's really desperate to play for Iraq. Some of the expats that get accused of not wanting to play for Iraq and they're only doing it because it's a side option. Rawan is dying to represent Iraq. There's no talk of any other country, solely focused on playing for Iraq. And I think he's going to be such a valuable asset to the national team. For me, though, Rawan aside, I would love to see Jilouan given a proper opportunity. I think Osama Rashid has plenty to offer. I still think Justin can offer a lot down the wing. I'm a big fan of Bayish, but they're completely different players. I was watching a video earlier, some analysis, and it really highlighted the difference between Justin and Bayish. And not so much talking about Bayish being a bad player, but they're both very different in terms of their skill sets. You have Bayish, who as a winger, he's quite orthodox. He hogs the touchline, he's fast, he knows how to beat a man, puts in a decent cross here and there. But Justin, for me, is more of what I want Iraq to be in an attacking fashion. He's a player that cuts in on his stronger foot on the right. He creates space for players like Ali Adnan or Dargham down the wing by dragging defenders across, opening up space. And I think that's something we've really lacked. Ali Adnan, it might be age catching up with him, it might be just bad form, but we haven't seen Ali Adnan really being an attacking outlet for Iraq for some time. And I think part of that is Justin not being in the national team. Justin being there, he cuts in, he's very skillful, he's got a very good creative pass in him, so he can find Ali Adnan once Ali makes those runs. He can bring others into the game, and I think that's something we're desperately missing. So these expats definitely have a place in the national team, and one thing I'm hoping would happen is that given our squad will have to play 3 games, maybe FIFA will allow us to take a larger number of players. I'm not exactly sure. These circumstances are very odd. I imagine there will be some degree of leeway. If, for example, Iraq are able to take, let's say, 30 players rather than the 23, you'd hope to see even more expats involved in the squad. Amir Al-Amari has also been invited to the Iraqi national team. He's just today signed for, I think it's pronounced Halmstads. They've just been promoted to the first division in Sweden. They won the second division last year. So clearly he's making progress in his club career. Hopefully that his season goes really well and we'll see him with the national team sometime soon. He looked really good when we saw him for the Iraqi youth team. He didn't get that many minutes, but what we saw, at least I was very impressed with him. Another young Iraqi from Sweden, Muhannad Jihaz, was also invited, but there was so much controversy surrounding this.
It's been an interesting case with Muhannad Jihaz ever since he was not able to join one of the more recent squads with the national team, and it's culminated into this, where he's got similar issues as what Osama Rashid had way back years ago when Osama Rashid was breaking into the national team, which is administrative problems, transferring his documents from Sweden to the Iraqi FA. So it's really complicated things, and it's pretty frustrating because I think he could be a good player for us. But these administrative problems, they've been an issue for a number of our players, which is frustrating. Why the Iraqi FA isn't doing more to help our players make the transition, because we know that he wants to play for Iraq. So it's pretty different. It's a frustrating thing.
I mean, there are people talking about him not wanting to play for Iraq. There's talks about him being reluctant to play for Iraq because he's adamant he's going to get called up for the Sweden team, and that this is all just a ploy to delay playing for Iraq. But I guess for me, really, is that we don't actually know the truth. And that's why I've been reluctant to comment too much on it. I know he's been breaking into the first team for his club, and at one point he was reluctant to play for Iraq because he was still trying to make a name for himself, trying to secure his position in the first team. That much I can understand, and I could sympathise with him. But I think we're coming to the point where people are starting to ask questions and nobody really knows the truth. So we need to just sit and wait. But you mentioned something that I think is very important. The Iraqi FA is aware of all these talents playing in Sweden. You have, for example, Hussein Ali, Oribro, you have Aymar Shar, you have Amir Al-Amari we discussed earlier. All these players are playing in Sweden, and none of them are actually playing for the national team. Granted, they are young players, they've still got a lot to do in order to get their chance to play for the national team, but the Iraqi FA should be working on their paperwork. They should be putting the wheels in motions that should these players be good enough, they should already be eligible and ready to represent the national team. And I think what we have right now is the complete opposite. We have these players being only really eligible for Sweden, being likely to play for Sweden because they've grown up there, they think it's a better national team, they want to play with a better team, playing against the best teams in Europe. Maybe they see it as an opportunity to play for a team in the World Cup, and they might not see Iraq as being a team likely to make that. But on the other hand, it's very likely some of these players have heard about the experiences of expat players in the Iraq national team from Sweden. The truth is, none of us actually know the truth. There was talk earlier about Mohamed wanting to secure his team in his club's first starting 11, and he's only really had his breakthrough season recently. And for that, I could understand him not wanting to earn the call-up for playing for Iraq recently, which he turned down. This time it's a bit different, We've seen administrative problems previously with Iraq. You mentioned Osama Rashid, and that took nearly a year to resolve. I wouldn't be surprised to see something similar here. But at the same time, let's say Mohamed doesn't want to play for Iraq right now. Let's say he does have an option to play for Sweden and he's trying to explore that. I find it very hard to kind of criticize him for that. He may have heard things about playing for Iraq that he was a bit worried about, or maybe he thinks that he has a better chance of making a successful career if he plays for Sweden. They qualify for the World Cup, he plays against the biggest teams at the biggest stage. We don't know. Can you really criticize a player for having those aspirations? I mean, I'm in two minds. Obviously, as an Iraqi fan, I want to see Iraq being the team that takes all the players. But knowing players, that they are humans after all. They want to secure their financial future. They love their game, and they do what they think is best for their career. If, for example, Mohamed decides that right now I don't want to play for Iraq, he waits for a call-up from Sweden, it doesn't come. In a year or two, he decides, you know what, let me play for Iraq. Should we say no to him on that basis? I don't think so. I think if a player comes in and performs and he's a good player, it doesn't matter for me whether this player wanted to play for Sweden at one point. I think as Iraqis, we make a real big deal of this whole ghira and Ibn al-Balad and you have to play for us, but for me, no. Football, at the end of the day, you put your best team out. And if, for example, Mohamed happens to be a better fullback than some of the players we have, I'm sure their national team will be a lot better overall. What do you think, Hassan? Do you agree with me? Am I wrong in this? This is something that's been bugging me for a long time.
Yeah, so personally, my thoughts like on international football, I like to see players representing the national teams that they associate themselves most with. So the idea of a player choosing one national team over another just purely based on how much he can win, I'm not a big fan of that personally. I'm going to say that outright. But at the same time, when we're talking about these expat players, if they're not, a number of them, they do have legitimate chances to play for European national teams. Also, Justin Meram, before he came to play for Iraq, he would have been called up for the U.S. national team way back then. So these players are rejecting an opportunity to play with these other national teams, and anybody who is willing to deal with all of the baggage that comes with playing with the Iraq national team, I'm not going to criticize them. I'm not going to say you can't say that they, are doing it just purely, for specific advantages, because there's very few advantages of playing for Iraq when you have the opportunity to play for a European national team. So this is also a thing that a lot of our expats, they get unfairly criticized, in my opinion, because all the Iraqi league players, they don't have that opportunity to play for Europe. So there's never going to be a question of their loyalty or to the national team or anything like that, because there is no other choice for them. But with the expat players, there is always that opportunity. So anytime that they cannot play for join a national team camp, then suddenly their loyalties are questioned, which is unfair in my opinion.
I think, Hassan, you touched on a very important point here. There's a lot of things that happen in terms of me talking to players that I don't really publish online, mostly because it's just me interacting with players as friends, really, rather than as a kind of a journalist per se. I promise you, and people listening might doubt this, but I promise you, there's not a single player, especially expats, that I've spoken to and they've told me, I only play for Iraq because I get media coverage. I only play for Iraq because I make a bit of money from it. They don't, by the way. I swear to God, every single expat player, whether it's been Justin, whether it's been Rebin, whether it's been Jilwan, Osama, or Rawan, every single one of them literally only wants to play for Iraq because they see themselves as a member of that country. They love the fans. They want to repay the fans. They want to bring happiness to, unfortunately, a country that's seen a lot of doom and gloom. But some fans, it's a shame they still doubt this. I'm not here to promote them. I'm telling you genuinely, these are my interactions with these players every single day. Maybe, and I'm not saying this is fact, but let's say Mohanna doesn't want to play for Iraq right now. That shouldn't be the end of his opportunities to play for Iraq, because players change, their opinions change, their opportunities change. And I think we need to be a lot more lenient when it comes to players that are playing outside of Iraq. We need to give them a lot more leeway, the same way players that play for the Iraq national team, they're given a lot more opportunities as well.
Totally agree with this, because it's something that the players, they're always getting questioned about their their loyalties and all of this. So it's quite unfair. And and we mentioned this already, is that somebody who's playing willing to deal with the baggage of playing with Iraq, that's you can't question his loyalties at that point. They're coming in, and a lot of the time they're flying in from halfway around the world in business class and business economy class, here to play 45 minutes in the middle of nowhere, halfway around the world, and then they'll fly back. In my as far as I'm concerned, that takes loyalty to the country to deal with all of this and come in and play. And you're not getting we mentioned this, so there's no huge benefits to doing this. Jiloan, I remember ahead of the last World Cup, he was one step away from being representing Sweden at the World Cup, but right now we're seeing him ready to play for Iraq and completely willing, and he wants to play for Iraq, but the opportunity isn't really coming. These players, they do care about the country, and this is not it's a big discussion that a lot of our players are getting unfairly criticized for it, as far, in my opinion. And I think we need to be able to put all of this aside and just judge the player based on his ability and how much can he offer to the national team. Because questioning loyalties, that's just going to add more division within the national team that we just don't need.
Absolutely. I think that you mentioned that key there. The key thing is, what does the player offer the national team? If a player like Mohamed comes in, maybe he changed his mind. He saw he's not going to get an opportunity with Sweden. Now he wants to play for Iraq a couple of years down the line. If he's going to make Iraq better, he's going to get us an Asian Cup victory. He's going to qualify us for the World Cup. What does it matter? I'd rather have a player like that than a player from, let's say, the Iraqi league who absolutely committed. All he's ever cared about is playing for Iraq, but he's not actually good at playing football. For me, it's a no-brainer. But some people, unfortunately, the moment there's any doubt cast on a player, that's it. That player should be blacklisted. He doesn't want to play for Iraq, etc. But it's a shame, and I think hopefully these players do end up playing for Iraq and get an opportunity to really show their talents and make the fans happy, because I promise you that's all these players really care about. Let's move on a little bit. We've talked about Sweden. Now there's another player who used to play in Sweden. Now he's signed with Zaho. Brawa Nouri makes the move from Indonesia, 3-month loan in the Iraqi Premier League. He was a quality player when we saw him for the national team. He's a player that I'm really gutted that we've not seen more of. I think he only played like 11 games or something. But he's now playing in the Iraqi Premier League. I'm hoping, and I would love this to happen, although I very much doubt it, if he comes in, really sets the league alight, maybe it gives Katanec something to think about. What do you think of this move?
Yeah, it's an interesting move. The Indonesian league, I think that's where he was playing. It's not a league that would have gotten him much attention. I'm sure he was enjoying his time there, following him from social media. But from just purely footballing perspective, it's not going to get him too much attention if international football is the goal. So joining the Iraqi league, it's going to be much easier for Katanec to see how he's doing. I would like to see him back. He didn't really get a fair chance, which is a trend with a lot of these players who are coming in from outside. And I'm not sure what it is. It could be, a culture clash within the national team with the coaches or something like that. Who knows? But, I would like to see him come back, because I do remember, he was a quality player, several years ago. And then as well, with Östersund's Europa League, it's phenomenal. So, good players are always welcome with the national team as far as I'm concerned. So let's see how he does. And I really hope it's a chance for him to, show his quality once more.
Well, there's a lot going on in the Iraqi League. Just right now, Jawiya leading with 6 points. And Shurta are third. They've recently been involved in 2 transfer fiascos. Number one, Saad Natiq, very, very close to a move to Al Ahly in Saudi Arabia. That move was blocked. Shurta refusing to even acknowledge and reply to the offer made by the Saudi club. Saad desperate to make the move. There was leaks of his voice note that he sent to the Saudi side, basically telling them that he's heartbroken. He was very keen to play for Al Ahly. Do you think Shurta should have made the transfer possible for the player? It's clear that he wants to make that move. Saudi League is a very, very competitive league, one of the best in Asia. Do you think they should have let him go because it's in the best interest of Iraqi football, or do you think as a club they have every right to turn this offer down and keep one of their best players?
I see a number of different perspectives here, because, on one hand, the player, of course, he's looking for his career. He's looking for, to play in stronger leagues and better teams and, the biggest competitions, better contracts, all of these things. So, of course, there's this aspect. And then at the same time, we would like it for our Iraqi clubs to enable players to make that step up whenever possible. But at the same time, I do see the perspective that the clubs are not. They don't. They should. The player is not entitled to a given move. So if there's the offer coming in is not sufficient or something like that, and of course they're not entitled to the move because he does have a contract. So that at the end of the day, there is a contract there with his club. But it is one thing that is quite troubling is the way that Shota have gone about these things, and this has been a trend over the years. I remember all the way back to Lorgam when he first made his move to Turkish league. Where it's difficult for players to make that move from Shota to other leagues and other teams. Again, there was Lorgam, there was Mohamed Ali as well when he wanted to move away, and then countless offers from Europe were not even responded to. A lot of them were just Shota. They just let the offers expire, and that was that. They didn't respond. So, and then you also have with now Saad Natal. So it's a trend with this club. Kind of unfortunate because it does feel like it is holding back a lot of our players because these are not offers that come all the time. And,
you've mentioned some deals. Others that spring to mind was Safat Hadi's move to Russia, nearly breaking through midway before they actually finally agreed terms. Ali Adnan, I remember, had some issues. There were offers from Fenerbahce and a few other teams that they couldn't agree a deal with Shurta. So whilst Shurta as a club obviously have their own interests, I also think they should be using this platform to send their players across the world, showcasing their talents, and then using that as a springboard to bring even more talents through and continuing to export their players across the world. But they seem very reluctant to actually make these deals happen. So it is strange and it is disappointing to see a talented player like Saad Natiq, who he's improved so much over the last couple of years. And we talked about Ahmed Ibrahim reaching 100 caps. He's a player that was playing in Saudi Arabia. He really developed during his time there. And once he retires, you're going to need players like Saad to use their experience, to use their presence and help the national team fill the void that will be left by Ahmed Ibrahim. So to see this move blocked, for me, it was very, very frustrating, at least. The same thing I'd say as well, the way Shurta make the moves for their players very, very difficult. The irony wasn't lost on me. They at the same time, whilst blocking Saad Natiq's move, you have Mohamed Dawood announcing his retirement. Why? Because he wants to play for Shurta and his club are not letting him go. I found that very, very frustrating to see. I found it comical and quite frankly embarrassing. Am I being harsh there, or do you agree with me?
No, I totally agree. You touched on that earlier about Shota. Like when you have players like this that are getting attention from other leagues, it's not a bad idea to promote your club as a doorway to Europe and better leagues in general. So bringing in these players, I really think that this is kind of highlighting a kind of a lack of professionalism within the Iraqi league, where you have like these players who, on one hand, the player, he wants to move, but then as well, there's a certain way, there should be a way to do it, a way to go about things, and the way Mohamed Dawood went about it is not the way to do it, But at the same time, there's also an issue with the clubs where they're not negotiating, they're not looking at offers, they're not it's a two-way issue, which I think we need a little bit more of that professionalism and for clubs to be more open to negotiating among themselves and with other clubs.
I think it's indicative of an overall bigger problem, which is this lack of professionalism, this lack of framework across Iraqi teams, and there needs to be a systematic change where the FA put in regulations, put in a framework to help clubs sell their players, to give players rights when it comes to these moves, etc. I think right now there's a huge lack of legal boundaries that stops players like Mohamed Dawood going to the media and forcing his club to sell him because he wants to retire, for example. I think in another country, if a player tried to do that, the player would be forced to, for example, pay out his contract. Would Mohamed Dawood do that? I don't know. Saad Natiq offered to do that for his contract with the Shurta. Even that didn't go through. But that again goes to my point about having a proper framework in place to support the club, support the players during the transfer windows in the Iraqi Premier League. Now, sticking with transfers in the Iraqi First Division, Dewania signing Pato. Was that ever likely to happen, Hassan?
As far as I know, I don't think that there was any realistic chance of that happening. And it seems to be that, judging from the way that Hussein Ankoushi, the president of the club, has been speaking on social media, as well as that it looks like it was just one big marketing move, as far as I can see, where he was promoting his own club. Because all in the indications, were it made no sense for this move to happen. Dewania sitting mid-table in the Iraqi league, Pato, a guy who could easily join any of the Gulf leagues or anywhere else in the world, pretty much. He could always find a place better than a mid-table club in the Iraqi league. So, and even from the financial aspect, this guy is a player who spent a number of years playing in China, earning huge wages. Actually, he's married to the daughter of one of the richest men in Brazil, so that's another thing. So he's not hurting for money. So I don't think that there was any realistic way to bring him to Iraq, unless there was some side of him that's just curious of living in Iraq, which is kind of... I'm not sure about that, but yeah. And so now we've seen him making that move to the MLS in the United States with Orlando City FC. So yeah, and I think Dewania have settled for another Brazilian player.
I think Dewania is an interesting project. On one hand, I really want them to succeed because it shows that private ownership can succeed in Iraqi football. It's going to set a standard for the rest of the clubs in order to start operating under private ownership. I think a lot of clubs in Iraq right now are relying or over-relying on government handouts, etc. So I want somebody to come in and change that entire framework. But I find him so hard to like, Ankoushi. It seems that everything he does is just a marketing tool. He doesn't seem to actually care at all about Dewania. He talking of retirement, he was another person that tried to retire and step down from owning Dewania unless the fans came and apologized. And I can't believe it, but the Dewania fans actually ended up doing that. They came and they apologized because there was some talk in the media about people being unhappy with him running the club. But if he was actually interested in helping the club, he wouldn't be constantly in the media. He wouldn't be constantly tweeting and posting his own pictures, etc. And for me, this Pato move, I would have loved to have seen it. Think about all the publicity that this would have done for the Iraqi League. Hopefully positive publicity, but it fell through. They've got quite a few new players, yet they're struggling. And I think that also indicates that Ankoushi doesn't have any real idea of how to run a football club. You can't buy a club and just spend money bringing in expat footballers, hoping they're going to win you the league. There's no structure in place in terms of developing the team. There's no real system in place from a tactical perspective. We talked about how important tactics are for Iraq under Katanec, where any player can come in and use the same system and play the same football that Iraq have been playing recently. Dewania, they haven't really got that. They haven't got that idea. Instead, There's been numerous players released from their contracts recently, and for me, that indicates that Ankoushi doesn't actually know what he's doing. He's just bringing in any real expat that he can convince to come to Iraq and hoping that it's going to work out for the best. That's not how football works out. But again, I do want Diwania to succeed. I think it would be good for Iraqi football, but at the same time, he is very frustrating as an owner of a club. Do you think that they will go anywhere under him, or do you think this is just like something that'll last one season or two before he gets bored?
As far as I can see, it doesn't look good for a long-term project, because I don't see there is a project at all. I'm going to say this outright, but it's that, he's signing players. He signed a number of players. A number of players have left as well. He's gone through a number of coaches, and they're sitting mid-table. And their league position in and of itself isn't an issue, because if you're world building a project and you're looking long term rather than just this one season. But if you're looking for a project, you're not going through so many coaches, you're not going through so many players. So I don't see it as a real project. Honestly, right away from the very first summer transfer window, I was very hopeful, but it did give me a lot of memories. I'm an AC Milan fan. I remember years ago, Chinese owners, they took over the club at AC Milan. They signed a whole new team, and I think the team finished like 7th, 8th, and they ended up, the owners were not actually as rich as they claimed to be, and it was a mess. So I see a lot of similarities between these two situations, and I'm hoping that my instincts aren't correct, and that he does have some kind of a long-term vision, but it's becoming very, very difficult to really see that happen. And I really think more and more I believe that this is just an opportunity for him to really make a name for himself, get himself out there in the media, and then he'll get bored eventually and move on. I would really like to, as you mentioned, for that Iraqi league to really develop and move past having clubs being so dependent on government money. I'd really like to see proper private ownership of that Iraqi league, where clubs can actually earn money out of transfers, earn money through all kinds of different ways, and develop themselves further that way. I don't think that that's something that can be achieved just off of one owner. I think this is something that is a systemic problem that's that's going to have to be solved by the FA and by the government and people who are responsible for the Iraqi league. I think this is a big issue that needs to be solved moving forward, but I'm not really confident that Diwania is going to be the springboard for changes like this.
This month we've spent a lot of time talking about talented youngsters. We focused a lot on Sweden, but today we're going to be interviewing Ali Almosawe, very talented attacking player playing in Copenhagen in Denmark. He's a player that has been called up for the Iraqi under-19 and is somebody that we're going to keep a close eye on.
Hi Ali, thank you so much for joining us, man. You're one of the players that we've been tracking for a long, long time, and we're very excited to have you on the podcast.
Assalamu alaikum, brother. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Wa alaikum assalam. Our pleasure's all ours, man. So tell us, how are you finding everything right now in terms of football and managing it with COVID?
I mean, it's right now it's really difficult, especially in terms of the limits that, how do you say, the restrictions and how many people that you can be in the same place and stuff like that. So it's tough for everybody. I think I know that some places are worse than others, but like here in Denmark, it's a bit tough, to be honest. It's not so easy.
So again, like I said, I've been following you for a long time, but you're still a young player and you still got your whole career ahead of you. Some fans might not know too much about you, but I'm sure they're going to be excited once they find out a little bit. Can you talk us through what you're currently doing in football? Which club you're at, how many games you've played this season, etc.?
No, for sure. I play at FC Copenhagen. I've been doing so for 2 years. And yeah, I arrived January 2019, if I'm not mistaken. And Yeah, we've been playing since our league started in August, and we should have been starting the league by now if it wasn't for the COVID-19. But we are one of the few lucky clubs that have now began to train with no with no restrictions in terms of how many players we can be. We are very lucky because everybody in the club, especially my team, we are under contracts. So it's how can I explain it? It's like being a professional. So by the government, we are allowed to train fully everybody. So we are a bit more lucky than others, I would say.
Excellent. So you say you've been at Copenhagen for a long while, over 2 years. Let's rewind even before that. Let's talk about you.
Yeah.
Where did you grow up? Tell us a little bit about your family and your upbringing.
No, for sure. I grew up in inside of Copenhagen. It's it's not so it's not the most how do you say, it's not the best place in terms of growing up, but I had some friends I grew up with, and we all had a ball in our hands, and we just, how can I say, started playing for fun down in the what do you call it, garden, or where we play five-a-side or something like that, and we just played every single day, and some of us even started playing in the same club when we started football as well. My father is he's fully Iraqi, and I believe he moved from Iraq to Syria, where he met my mother. She's from Syria, so and I believe after he moved to Syria, they both they agreed to move to Europe, and they came then to Denmark, where me and my other siblings were born.
What was it about Iraq in terms of a football perspective, or it might have been other influences that for you was a major pull in terms of you wanting to represent the Iraqi national team?
My father's a big football fan, and as I said, yeah, he's Iraqi, and he introduced me when I was younger. He just we talked about the Iraqi national teams and some of the players that were playing there, and I remember him first introducing me to the player Ali Adnan, and I remember he also played in Europe and some other places as well. So he was that player was the first introduction to the Iraqi national team, and then just we just discussed the national team itself. We just talked about the coaches, the matches, the Asia Cup they play and stuff like that. So it's just light introductions.
You're quite young. Do you happen to remember anything from the 2007 Asian Cup win?
No. I haven't. I don't know the details about matches and so on, but I know that they really, really well that year. They won it, right? They won it. That year,
2007 was the first Asian Cup Iraq ever won.
That's the first thing I knew about the national team, that they won that the Asia Cup. But and I also know that there are a lot of strong national teams from Asia as well. So they must have been playing really, really good. So that was my first introduction. It was
a special generation, that team, but hopefully not the last time we win it, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
Maybe next time you're going to be in the team that wins the Asian Cup for us. Let's go back to you growing up. At what age did you realise that you're actually quite good at football and you can make this a career move for yourself?
I would say about 9-10 years old. 9 or 10, I would say. I started when I was 5, and 5 is a really young age. So, I remember also my friends, their parents and stuff. They were telling me, because I can't remember how I was playing when I was so young. But they were telling me that you could see I had a talent, but it wasn't, how can you say, discovered yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
like a hidden gem.
Yeah, for sure. So when I turned 10 or 9, 10, 11, around these three numbers, I started to get noticed a bit more.
And talk us through that. You got noticed by academies, or what happened?
Yeah, I was playing really well, and I remember that team I started playing when I started my football career. It was called B93, and it's a very big local club.
Yeah.
And we were just playing other teams. We were just playing other teams at our age, and I remember we were winning every single match, and we were just playing incredible. And I was just scoring and playing really, really well. So from there, I just, like, especially my father. Like, my father in the beginning, he didn't watch so many of my football matches because he obviously didn't knew that it was so serious. But he was just starting to get like, his friends was telling him, like, your son is really, really good. Take a look at him and stuff like that. So he also got noticed through that, you know.
Yeah, that's from there. What happens though at youth team especially? When did you kind of realize that you're going to be able to make such a huge jump to like a club like Copenhagen?
Well, around 11, 12, when I was going from 11 to 12 years old, I started to get some attention from the three biggest clubs in Denmark, and it was Brøndby, FC Copenhagen, and FC Nordsjælland at that time for development.
I mean, Copenhagen, Brøndby are a big club, don't get me wrong, but Copenhagen are a huge team. They've been in Champions League numerous times. They've played against my favourite team, Manchester United, a few times.
Yeah.
So for you to be playing at Copenhagen, yani mashallah, means you're doing something right.
Yeah, but in the beginning, when I moved, at some time I had to move from my local club that I started at 5 years old, and when I moved, I was 12. But when I moved the first time, I didn't move to FC Copenhagen. I moved to FC Nordsjælland, and that's like, I had a lot of videos and clips from there, and I think a lot of people also, like from Iraq, when they noticed it was from that time at that club also.
We'll come back to Iraq in a second. I just want to talk a little bit about your experiences with Copenhagen. How have you found being at such a huge club? How have you coped with the pressure? How have you coped with the kind of the attention of fans constantly watching you and waiting for you to progress?
I mean, in the beginning it was quite tough because I had some what can I say? I had some injuries that I had to deal with. So it was tough in the beginning because I didn't play a lot, and a lot of people were asking into my situation because they were really, in a good way, obviously, they were really curious about how it's going and stuff like that. So it was a bit tough in the beginning because it was hard to say that I was injured because I knew everybody wanted to see me play and stuff like that. But Alhamdulillah, I came back. I feel even stronger, and as I said, we are halfway through our season now. And
how have you found the season?
It has been, ups and downs. You know, we have been playing against some really good teams, and we have come out with some really good results. And there's also been times where we have been our own worst enemy, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So it has been some ups and downs, but of course, like, you learn from them.
Fingers crossed things go very smoothly for you. When can Iraqi fans hopefully expect to see you with the first team in Copenhagen?
Wow, it's tough to say because in football it's also about luck. Like, everything can go from one day to another day, or it can go up to a month, or how long it's tough to say because it also depends on maybe injuries, or everything can happen in football, you know. So it's tough to say because if I maybe say 3 months or something like that, and something happens in the next week, then people will obviously know that I'm not, telling the truth, or you know what I mean. So it's tough. It's tough to say when a date. So it's tough.
Of course, man. Look, no worries in terms of having pressure. It's just, as fans, we're all very excited to see how things go for you, and we wanna obviously see what's best for you as a footballer and for your career, hopefully that'll lead you to representing Iraq. With Iraq, we've obviously you qualified to play for the Iraqi national team. Have you been contacted by the Iraqi FA at all? Have you sorted out your paperwork? What's the situation with you?
Out of all the times, I know there's been a lot of talk about invitations and stuff like that, but out of all the times these things have been coming up, there's only been one time where I have actually gotten an actual invitation, And that invitation, it was too difficult to say yes to because of all the restrictions with Corona and with all the trouble I would have to go through, especially from traveling from Denmark and coming back, and I would be in quarantine for 2 weeks and couldn't train with the team. So it was too tough.
Well, hopefully it'll be the first of many invitations, man.
Yeah.
What would it mean for you to represent Iraq, to put on that shirt?
I mean, obviously, I think for just like for any other player who represents a national team, like it's something special, you know. I know every footballer you ask will probably give you the same answer. It's special for sure because you're representing a nation, you know. So it's a different feeling. Let me just put it at that. It's a different feeling.
And what about on social media? You must get loads of messages from Iraqi fans, etc. How does that make you feel?
No, like it's tough. It's very hard to describe Iraqi people with only words. The amount of support they give to their players, the amount of support they give to me, it's unbelievable. Like it's tough to say because also like my Danish friends and people from Denmark when they see how many things they write to me and stuff like that, and everybody tells me, oh, it's really cool, and I tell them like they're the best fans in the world.
Do you read and write Arabic?
I do not read, I do not write. My father helps me with that, but I do speak, you know?
Yeah. Hopefully, once you improve your Arabic, you could actually start to read the messages and you could appreciate that a little bit more.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So what would you say your goals are right now going into like this season, the rest of this season, maybe next year? Do you have any kind of aims and objectives you want to achieve anytime soon?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in terms of on the field, just just play my game. Help the team as much as possible, especially by scoring and assisting. So just being on like helpful on that part of the end of the things.
For the fans that haven't seen you play, how would you describe your position style, your abilities, your skill sets, etc.?
I mean, I normally usually play either right wing or left wing. I'm a left-footed player, creative, have a lot of speed also, so that helps a lot also. So yeah, I would say a fast, creative winger.
There are, I don't know if you're in touch with any of these players that I'm about to name, but there's a kind of generation of young players right now developing in Europe, including yourself. So we have, for example, Zidane Iqbal right now at Manchester United. He's under 19. You have Ali Al-Hamadi at Swansea. We have, for example, Kado Siddiqui at Crystal Palace, amongst many other players. Are you in touch with these players, or do you feel like together you guys could actually make something special for the future of Iraqi football?
I'm not directly in touch with them, but I do know who they are, and I do see their amazing work. And for me, it makes me proud to see a lot of Iraqi players play in Europe as well, because I think in terms of Iraqi players, they are very underrated. You know what I mean? Like It's not because I want to say that people hasn't had an eye-opening for them, but there's a lot of good Iraqi young players, especially with a lot of, energy and hunger. So it makes me really happy to see a lot of young Iraqis doing so good in Europe as well.
Absolutely, Ali. We wish you all the best. We're very much looking forward to seeing how you develop and progress. And we hope you are going to be one of many Iraqi players based in Europe that we'll see in the future very, very soon, actually. Is there any message you want to send to the fans?
No, just to say thank you for all the support they have been giving me. It has not gone unnoticed. It has been making me smile a lot. And just be excited for the future. I think there's a lot of young Iraqi players, and I do really believe that there's gonna be a really bright future for Iraq in some years also. So just to be excited for the future.
Inshallah. Ali, thank you so much, man. It's an absolute pleasure talking to you today. We're very
Thank you,
excited
brother.
to see how things develop for you. Keep safe, and
Thank you,
we'll
brother.
hopefully do another interview with you sometime in the future. Maybe by then
Inshallah.
you'd have represented Iraq, maybe even made your debut. Please keep in touch. We're very
Inshallah.
excited to hear from you always.
For sure, brother. For sure, brother. Thank you for having me.
Well, we're going to keep an eye on the Iraqi League. We're also going to be keeping a close eye on how the expat players do with over the next month. I'm hoping we're going to see some friendlies arranged in light of the cancelled game. Of course, we're going to be recording right after that to reflect on any friendlies that we do play. And we'll be giving you news on any other things that happen in the world of Iraqi football. Hassan, thank you so much for joining us. Any last message to the fans?
Yeah, so hopefully we see further developments. It was nice to see expats finally getting a look back into the national team. Hopefully further improvements within the national team. We've had some good results recently in the friendlies, and hopefully a good push going forward with the upcoming World Cup qualifiers.
Inshallah. Where can fans find you?
Yeah, as always on Twitter is where I'm primarily based at Hassan_1193.
Thank you very much, Hassan. You can find me, guys, on Twitter at Iraq Football Pod. If you want to find me on Instagram, it's at Iraq Football Pod, and my personal page at Hassanan, Hassane. We do want to hear from you guys. Please get in touch. If there's any particular players you want us to interview, please message us, email us, visit the website, and more importantly, share our page with your friends and family. We need your support in terms of growing the page, and the only way we can do that is through you guys. Take care, guys. Stay safe, and Yalla ya Iraq.